As you are probably aware, most of the information that we bring up into the brain is crossing over. Sometimes it crosses over at the spinal cord level. Sometimes it crosses over in the brainstem or within the diencephalon region there, thalamus or something. So there's a number of places it will potentially cross. There's actually some information that stays on that side, and it's interpreted on the same side, so it's ipsilateral. But when it comes to brain and their overall generalized functions, one side is generally more dominant than the other. How they communicate with one side to the other, because we got to coordinate all this activity, right? Even though information's coming up one side, I got to shuttle it over to where it's predominantly interpreted. The corpus callosum is what is going to, and it's just a few billion nerves that kind of go back and forth. A few million nerves that kind of go back and forth there. So that is what connects it. If we have damage to this region, that usually results in various different forms of epilepsy. So our kind of understanding, it's fascinating, understanding what happens in the human brain comes about from really a lot of horrible things that happen to individuals. So understanding regions of the brain that help us to learn and interpret stuff, with like this with epilepsy, understanding that it's damage to these nerves that communicate, that allows us to figure out really a lot of functions within the brain. And here you can see, the left side of the brain is more kind of science, as you can see, math. There on the right-hand side is kind of your visuospatial type of things, seeing things and understanding shape, understanding shapes and patterns. It's pretty interesting with board exams and entrance exams into different schools and whatnot. I had a friend, she was taking the entrance exam, or kind of an entrance exam for lack of a better word. It was a test that dentists take. And it was left hemisphere based, facts, information, science. And then there was a whole portion of the test that was based on visual spatial stuff, looking at teeth. What are the differences between the pictures, basically, the spacing in between teeth. And it tested a whole various different number of aspects according to visual spatial tasks. So I thought that was really fascinating. I'd never seen that before in any like MCAT or anything like that. I don't remember seeing any of that. I don't even remember what the hell how I did on it. Okay, I'm old. But these two hemispheres do exhibit very specific dominant things, where the left only is basically math, science, language, Brokaw's area, Wernicke's area, speech, language, all that's just on the left. So if we damage these regions, our ability to do what I'm doing right now and saying words really well sometimes, that would indicate a damaged region there. If I can't coordinate that muscular action, moving the tongue, the ligaments, the vocal folds, all these fantastical muscles right here to help fine tune that so the sound coming out makes sense. Understanding what language is, saying things in a coherent pattern. If I don't have any of that communication between, these two sides here, I can't do that. And those are two pretty important areas. Again, language is a pretty important thing. It allows us to interact with the world around us, to understand the world around us. Okay? So you can build things. So when we look at that, I have two major areas associated with language. And again, this is primarily just on the left-hand side. I have Brokaw's area. It helps to control the motor aspects of speech. Excuse me. Tongue. The facial muscles, the muscles around the larynx, right? All that is going to be coordinated by Brokaw's area. Brokaw's aphasia, I can't slur, I slur words. I can't coordinate all those muscular activities that I have to do. The intrinsic muscles around the larynx, the extrinsic muscles surrounding the larynx into the facial region. Okay? I understand everything. I just can't coordinate all these motor aspects. Okay? And that's Brokaw's aphasia. Word salad involves Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area, again, it's on the left. Just one's in the frontal lobe and one's in the temporal lobe. Okay. So these are two areas that intimately communicate a lot with one another, but they are very, they're not near each other. So we're going to have very specific nerve fibers, connecting these two regions very intimately with one another. This is, again, comprehension. Okay, understanding those words. Again, if I am reading something, but out of my mouth comes absolutely nothing that makes no sense, they're just a bunch of words put in, that is word salad. I've never really seen it called Wernicke's aphasia, but I guess that would be it. Okay, it's usually just referred to as word salad. In this, I can coordinate perfectly fine all the muscular movements to talk. There's just no understanding. Okay? Even though I may mentally know what in the heck I'm wanting to say, I can't verbally do it because there's no connection between those things. If you are looking at a written word, then we have to go back to the occipital lobe, right? Because that's where our primary vision center is. So we will have some information coming in from vision centers. What if I'm not reading it? Okay. Well, I mean, I can hear it. I have my ear sitting right here, right? It can go back and communicate up in there with Wernicke's area and allow me to communicate, which then CUA. It's those arcuate fibers. They go up and they connect Wernicke's area to the motor speech area, to Brokaw's area. Okay. This is what's going to coordinate to the specific primary motor cortex region involved with skeletal muscle movement around the face, the neck here. Okay. So when it comes to language, it is a multifaceted concept. Brokaw and Wernicke's are the two major areas. If we are reading a word, eyeball all the way back to the occipital lobe, where my vision center is. Am I hearing a word? Here in the temporal lobe, I'll send it from that region to Wernicke's area. Angular gyrus, you can include it in Wernicke's area. That's perfectly fine with me. Angular gyrus, all it does is integrate all the various different types of input from reading and writing. So angular gyrus is involved, but just call it Wernicke's area. That's perfectly fine. But all of these primary all of these primary centers that handle that information, it handles it, it understands it. Okay? And remember, we have the association areas even around those to help us interpret it. But here, now that I've gathered the input, hearing it, reading it, okay, Now I have to send it to a spot to put it all together. And that's what Wernicke's area and angular gyrus do. They help us to comprehend what we are hearing, what we are reading. Now the teacher asks you to explain yourself. Well, now those arcuate fibers are going to extend up into Broca's area, which sends nerves up to the primary motor cortex to help me control extrinsic and intrinsic muscles associated with the larynx, the tongue, with the facial muscles, to coordinate all of this activity so I can articulate words at a proper pattern, at a proper frame rate, again, in a coherent fashion. So if I was to ask you on an exam, describe to me the areas involved with reading a document and then explaining that document to a group of your friends, how would that go about? Well, you'd say you're reading it. So your retina back to the primary vision center. And from there, we'll send nerve fibers up to the Wernicke area as we bring this input in. What if I ask, say, hey, you are reading, you're reading a page in your book, and you hear somebody over in the group next to you talking out loud and kind of talking about the same kind of concept that you are. Describe to me what's happening in the brain. Well, okay, I'm reading, so I've got my primary vision center, got the occipital lobe sending information up to Wernicke. I'm eavesdropping on the person around me. Well, you're not eavesdropping, right? If they're talking really loud. But I'm listening to the group next to me. And I'm integrating that information and the information I'm reading to try to formulate an idea. I'm bringing all that information into Wernicke's area. I want to be able to integrate what I'm hearing and what I'm reading to my fellow group mates. So I send those fibers over to Broca's area, which synapses up into the primary motor cortex. And I'm able to communicate in a very coherent, proper paced, proper understanding fashion to my group mates. That would be a type of question that I could ask. Short answer wise. I might do it as put these steps in the correct order. And I may list out a bunch of different things. May give you the scenario and ask you to put them in the correct order. I can do that. I've done that in the past. Okay? So I've done them either way.